In this video, I'm going to share some brutally honest Google Ads truths that will give you an unfair advantage. I'm Ben Heath, the owner of a specialist ad agency called Heath Media, and we've spent more than $50 million on Google Ads for our clients. And a lot of our Google Ads success has come from finding and exploiting unfair advantages. Hopefully this video will help you do the same. Okay, so the first point I want to make is that your job as a Google advertiser is to spend your budget in the most efficient way possible. It's not to put your Google Ads in front of as many people as possible. And once you have that mindset, it affects everything about the campaigns you create, the strategies you use, how you go about approaching things from the basic to the more advanced. I'm going to explain in a minute. But I think this idea of the purpose of advertising is to put your stuff in front of as many people as possible is a very old school way of doing things. So that was absolutely the approach that people took when they were running TV ads, radio ads, newspaper ads, because you couldn't track the results. So an ad campaign that got ads in front of more people was seen as more valuable than one that put ads in front of less people. You didn't have the nuance in many cases to be able to decide, right, this ad campaign that's put in front of fewer people is actually doing more for our business, it's more profitable, therefore it's a better ad campaign than the one that's putting our ad in front of many people. Now we have much better tracking. So like I said, once you get that mentality established, it affects how you do things. So your ads will be put in front of more people if you run a brand awareness campaign, a website traffic campaign, than if you run a sales campaign or a leads campaign most of the time. But if the sales campaign or the leads campaign generates more sales or more leads, more things that really matter to your business and that you really want to optimize for, that's most likely going to be the right way to go. So that'd be a very, very basic version of, once you have this right mentality, how it affects your decision making. But if we go a little bit more advanced, you could look at the different keyword match types. So Google's going to recommend that you go with broad match on all your keywords. That means that your ads can be put in front of a wider variety of search results, some of which are highly relevant to what it is that you offer, some are not as relevant to what you offer, and that helps increase your reach. But again, will exact match convert better? If your job is to spend your budget as efficiently as possible, most of the time it will. Therefore, you might want to favor exact match, phrase match, as opposed to going broad. And we can apply that to quite advanced stuff like overlapping negative keywords. So what most Google advertisers will do is they'll create an ad campaign that targets a number of keywords, search campaign targets a number of keywords, and they will then add in negative keywords to filter out any searches that include things that people who are searching for that just aren't going to convert. Classic examples would be things like cheap or free. And you're just like, anyone searching for my thing plus the word free, I don't want my ad in front of that person. They're very unlikely to actually buy from me. So that's sort of one layer of doing that. But if you want to go further and think, okay, I want to spend my budget as efficiently as possible. I want the best results possible, not to reach as many searches, not to reach as many people. You can go a step further than that and add in negative keywords that filter out searches that do convert, that are relevant to your products and services, but perhaps they don't convert quite as well as other searches. These searches generate a cost per purchase of $30, but these ones generate a cost per purchase of $20. I'm actually happy to forego those sales and remove those because my job is to spend my budget as efficiently as possible. So there'll be a number of different examples depending on, going through the campaign creation process, how advanced you are. When you think about things that way, you think about things from first principles, it really helps with the decision-making process. And there I've just given you some examples. When you spend your budget in the most efficient way possible, your Google ad campaigns are more profitable. When they are more profitable, you're able to scale, you're able to acquire more customers, you're able to put your ads in front of more people eventually. Because I speak to a lot of business owners who want awareness, they want reach, they like the idea of getting out there, of having their stuff in front of people. And I often tell them that the best form of brand awareness is to have people buy and use your products and services. That's much better than an ad campaign that just sort of puts some sort of creative in front of people. That's not really like a tangible thing. People are going to see that. Will they remember it? Unless it's an incredible piece of ad creative, very unlikely. Whereas if someone buys your product and uses it regularly, and they go out into the world and friends and family see that they're using it and ask them about it, it's much more impactful to that person. It's much more likely to then spread to the awareness of the people around them. Same applies to a service. Like the best way to build brand awareness at scale is actually just to sell a load of what you do. So we make our campaigns really efficient, really profitable. Then we can scale, generate lots more customers profitably, and that achieves most of the objectives that we want to achieve as Google advertisers. Now, when you take this approach, you do start to run into a bit of a conflict with Google's recommendations. Most of the time, I'm a fan of Google's recommendations because they want us advertisers to get better results, and they know that if we get better results, we spend more money with them, we scale up our campaigns, and we stick around. All things that Google wants because we're their customers, we're the ones paying them, us advertisers. But they are incentivized to get us to broaden out our campaigns, to get us to put ads in front of more people. So if you, for example, use negative keywords in an overlapping sense to filter out relevant searches but ones that don't quite convert as well, Google will absolutely pop up with warnings and recommendations that you don't do that. And they'll say, you're missing out on potential clicks here, you're missing out on potential conversions. And it's like, I know, that's the point. I don't want those clicks, I don't want those conversions. They're not quite as profitable as other ones. And unless you're running into, in this scenario, search volume limits, okay, then you might need to expand and broaden things out because you're simply already putting ads in front of all the relevant searches. But a lot of advertisers aren't in that situation. If you're not in that situation, you want to spend as efficiently as possible. So just be aware that when you do take this approach and you look to narrow things down, you look to make them more specific, you look to make them more efficient, Google is going to, they're going to try and convince you otherwise, shall we say. The next truth that I want to share is that Google Ads is a skill and it takes time to develop that skill. A lot of people, when they first start running Google Ads, they have the misconception that the platform is there to guarantee them results, guarantee them leads, guarantee them sales. And as long as they set up a campaign, they will get those things and they're willing to pay money. And that's the wrong way of looking at it. You should look at Google Ads and all advertising as the opportunity to put your ads, put your stuff in front of people on whatever platform you're using. In this case, obviously, we're talking about Google Ads. It is your job and the skill of the advertiser to take that opportunity and turn it into leads and sales. Google advertising is not a video game. You are not advertising to non-player characters. You're advertising to real people that you want to take actions. There are many forces at play that can impact your results, many things that you need to be aware of. What worked now might not work in a year's time. A big way it will differ in terms of a video game where you're playing against NPCs, right? If you do the right things, you're going to go through the levels no matter what. That's not true with Google Ads. You need to work it out and figure it out and adjust with the times and develop that skill. So an analogy I like to use, a good way for people to understand what I'm talking about here, is imagine you never played tennis before.
Sorry about that, dude.
And you decided, well, I'm going to start playing tennis. You go down to your local tennis club, you maybe book out one lesson with an instructor for an hour, and you go, right, I now understand tennis. I'm going to enter in the local tournament, and I'm going to see how I get on. You're probably not going to win a point. You're going to get absolutely smashed by people that have been playing for years. And everyone sort of understands that with tennis, right? You can't just have one go for an hour or so and then look to compete with people who've been doing this a long time. How would you possibly win in that scenario? But they don't think about it that way when it comes to something like Google Ads. And it's absolutely the same thing. You are competing against experienced advertisers, people like myself who've been running Google Ads for more than 15 years, and it's going to be really hard to beat those more experienced Google advertisers if you are brand new to this. You are going to have to treat it like a skill that you're going to need to learn. You're going to need to watch content like this and educate yourself. You're going to need to practice. You're going to need to try things out and work it out for your business specifically. There are ways that you can fast forward that process of learning that skill, or at least give yourself a better chance of winning. So once you think about it through the tennis analogy, I think it really helps, right? If you pick a small, far less competitive niche early, assuming you can do that, you don't have like a business that already operates in a really competitive niche and you're coming over to Google Ads, then it's more difficult. But assuming you can choose your niche, that is absolutely one way to do it. You go, right, I can't compete selling fitness apparel against Nike and Adidas and all the big, like, there's no way. They have some of the best marketers in the world working at those companies. How am I going to be able to compete with that if I'm new to Google Ads? But you know what? I might be able to run the best Google Ads for chiropractors in my local town, because maybe there's only 5 to 10 other chiropractors running Google Ads in my local town, and a lot of them don't really know what they're doing. And actually, within a month or two, I might be the best Google advertiser as long as I take this seriously and learn it and work there. And then you can look to expand from there and sort of go up the league. If we go back to tennis analogy, after a month or two, you might be competitive in the local tournament. Maybe it's a lower level one, and you can get to the point where you can win that after a while. And then you look to step up to the county tournament once you've gotten to a certain level of skill. And then you can step up to the regional tournament and then the national tournament. You can go on and up and get more competitive. And there are absolutely markets where it's so much easier to win. Now, those markets where it's much easier to win, they're normally much smaller. So the potential rewards are much smaller. And the reason why they're easier to win is because there's far less competition. But that caps you. Because those really good Google advertisers that started in that space, they were promoted to higher leagues. So, okay, they dominated the best Google Ads chiropractor in a certain town. Right, I can now run chiropractic ads statewide or nationwide. I can start running ads for more competitive industries from a Google Ads standpoint. Maybe I'll go from chiropractic to something with a higher ticket in the medical space, right? That, I don't know, type of surgery or whatever that carries a larger customer average value, which obviously then confers more benefit to the business. So there's more opportunity for running the ads, all those sorts of things. So that's the process that you need to go through and you need to think about this. And you have to work out if you are willing and able to put in the time and effort to develop that skill. And you have to be honest with yourself here, because if you are a business owner and you've got all different types of other activities and things that you need to learn and get good at and do within your business, maybe learning this yourself is not the right way to go, particularly if you're in a really competitive niche. Like there are some niches where you can go from nothing to one of the best in that space because it's a small local market, there's not many competitors within a few months. There are other ones, if you're advertising something competitive nationally, internationally, where it's going to take years before you can compete with the big boys. Like try running the best Google ads in New York for personal injury lawyers. Good luck. That's a really lucrative potential market. It's very highly intent based. There are brilliant Google advertisers in that space. Some of the best in the world are going to operate there because it's so lucrative. Like if you operate in that space and you want to be one of the best Google advertisers there, that is going to take many years of learning, trial and error and things like that. So you can either choose an easier niche, or when it comes to Google ads, unlike with a tennis tournament, you can hire other people who have that expertise to enter the tournament and try and win it for you. So in that case, that's going to be hiring my agency, right? So if you're thinking, honestly, I don't have the time resources to develop this skill to be one of the best, you can work with us. We can create, manage, optimize your ad campaigns. We've spent tens of millions on the platform. We'll almost certainly get you significantly better results. And we can effectively enter as that more experienced player into the tournament and try and get you results. I think that another reason why I talk about the tennis analogy and how that ties in is because the rewards with Google advertising very much go towards the best. So this kind of happens with all technology and all business that's digital, definitely with digital marketing, is that 90+% of advertisers within any vertical will be losing money. There will be another 5%, maybe a bit more, that are doing okay. And then there will be those top 2, 3, 4% that are absolutely crushing it and are just printing money, because for every pound they spend on the Google ad campaigns, they're generating 12, 20, 30 pounds back, right? So the importance of winning and the rewards for winning are everything. And this happens, like I said, across all forms of digital business. It happens on YouTube. You're watching this video on YouTube, right? There will be many people that create content on YouTube, right? That basically get no traction. And then there are a handful of channels that have reasonable audience size, like just a very small percentage of the overall that have reasonable audience size like mine that get, thousands of views a video. Like that's quite rare. The rewards go to the top, but the rewards are really high at the top. Absolutely the same applies to Google Ads. So give that some thought. If you're interested in working with us, there is a link in the video description. You can click on that, book a free call with one of my team members to find out more. No obligation. We've probably worked with a business like yours in the past, and we can show you what we've done and tell you how we might be able to help you. So if that sounds interesting, go ahead and do that, and hopefully we get a chance to work together. Next Google Ads truth is that a very high customer LTV allows you to play Google Ads on easy mode. I think the trend nowadays is grind, hustle, work really hard. And absolutely that's a part of success in any domain. Same would apply to Google Ads, same applies to marketing and to business. I certainly went through periods of doing that. But I think what's sometimes lost with that narrative is where there are opportunities to be smart and to make something easier, take it. And I think this is the best example of that when it comes to Google Ads, when it comes to any form of marketing and customer acquisition, is that really high customer LTVs make everything really easy. I've talked previously about Google Ads being a skill. One way to navigate that, where you can win as a Google advertiser that is less skilled, is to have a really high customer LTV. So I'm going to give you some examples to help demonstrate this and drive this point home, right? So McDonald's, their average order value for McDonald's is about $9. So someone goes into McDonald's, they buy a burger, fries, maybe a drink. On average, that's $9. Now, if you're thinking about your customer as a customer that's worth $9, and then you're approaching a Google Ads thinking, okay, what can I afford to acquire this customer? What can I see in that cost per purchase column if I'm getting $9 back from a customer? I mean, $3 at most, a 3x return on ad spend, most likely. That would probably still be loss making. That basically rules out Google advertising or any form of paid acquisition, because you're not going to acquire lots of customers at scale for $3 each. It's just not going to happen. But here's the thing. The lifetime value of a McDonald's customer is over $5,000. They actually have a cohort of customers that are worth more than $50,000, and they use that to train their staff, because they say everyone that walks in is a potential $50,000 walking in. You treat them really well. They're not a $9 customer, they're a $50,000 customer. But we'll take their actual LTV, which is $5,000. Now, if you're thinking about this, talking with your team, you're approaching your marketing, if you know that a customer is worth $5,000, not $9, what are you then willing to pay in acquisition costs to get that customer? What can your cost to acquire that customer, your CAC, be? Well, a lot more than $3, $30 easy, $300 probably. So in that scenario, you can pay 100 times more to acquire a customer. And this is an extreme example. McDonald's is very good at turning one-time customers into repeat customers, into people that buy again and again and again, and that builds up the LTV. But if McDonald's was running Google Ads and they're competing against other fast food restaurants that don't do as good a job, so their LTV is much lower, they can afford to pay so much more to acquire a customer than their competition. Let's say they're competing against a local fast food restaurant that has an LTV of $50. That sounds ludicrous, but those will exist. So the $50 LTV versus the $5,000 LTV, the $50 LTV customer can't get anywhere near in terms of acquisition costs. And you often find that the businesses that scale the most and succeed the most when it comes to Google Ads, they aren't the ones that have the lowest cost per purchase or the best return on ad spend. Well, they have the best return on ad spend if you factor in lifetime value, not necessarily that initial transaction. They are the ones that make the most from their customers, because then it just, okay, I can afford to pay 10 times as much as you to acquire a customer. You've got no chance. I'm going to beat you, even if my campaigns are rubbish and yours are excellent. I'm going to beat you if the cost of Google Ads goes up 25% next year. It doesn't matter. I make so much money from my customers, I'm going to be fine over the long run. Now, you do have to factor in cash flow into that, but hopefully that helps drive the point home. I'm going to give another example of this because I think this one's probably even more powerful. And the reason why this next one's more powerful is because this business has found a way to become part of people's daily habits. And there's actually lots of businesses that can do this within their specific domain. Like, how can you become part of someone's daily, weekly, yearly habit within your niche? So the other example is Starbucks. The average order value from a one-time transaction, someone goes into Starbucks, orders online, $5.65. Really low AOV. You couldn't run Google Ads to acquire a $5 customer. Like, no way. Lifetime value of a Starbucks customer is $14,000. So even more extreme than the McDonald's example, because they found a way to become part of, in that case, people's daily habit. Many people use it daily. But there are lots of businesses that can use the same thing. You could be B2B and have your service be part of a habit, a routine, a subscription perhaps. It could be a software, it could be a service. You could sell all different types of products that people order regularly, they use regularly, they consume regularly, depending on what it is, right? So there's a few different components to this that you need to get right in order to be able to play Google Ads on easy mode. Firstly, your stuff has to be good enough for people to buy it again and again and again, or it has to be good enough for people to recommend it to other people. And you get, for every customer you get a couple of referrals. Some industries that's a lot easier than others, but those things need to be true. And that's not easy because you probably have to provide a product, service that is better than your competition in order to achieve that. But that is something that needs to be in here. The other part is that you then need to measure your cost to acquire a customer against your customer lifetime value, not against your initial order value. And I've spoken to a lot of business owners that make that mistake. They think they can only afford to pay a certain amount to acquire a customer. And actually, when we dig into their numbers and we go, no, your customer value is not a $70 transaction. The average customer buys from you 4 times. So your customers are worth $280. We could pay significantly more to acquire that customer. We can then scale. Let's say your maximum acceptable cost per lead was $30. You might be able to spend $1,000 a month and stay within that KPI. But as soon as you scale beyond that, because as you scale, your cost per conversion goes up, your cost per lead dips out of that, and you go, we're capped out at $1,000. But if you improve your customer lifetime value significantly, instead of paying $30 per lead, you can now pay $50, $60 per lead. That might allow you, instead of spending $1,000 a month, to spend $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month and still be within that KPI, still be achieving less than a $50 or $60 cost per lead, whatever it is that your target is. That allows you to acquire so many more customers, which leads to a lot more awareness, brand awareness like we talked about. You then build this massive customer database. You're far more likely to get word of mouth and referrals once you achieve critical mass. You are more likely to be able to remarket to those people to get them to buy again. Like, there are many businesses that are really aggressive on the front end customer acquisition for a number of years and find that they build such a large customer base that they don't need to do any cold customer acquisition anymore. They can just remarket and sort of hoover up easy, very inexpensive sales from their existing customer base because there's so many of them. Many businesses do that. To be honest, I kind of do that with my stuff. We only really advertise the ads that I'm running. We only really advertise to people that are in my warm audiences, not necessarily customers, people that have consumed my content. And it's the low-hanging fruit. It's the really easy people to convert. It's incredibly profitable. We have campaigns with more than 100x ROAS because we can generate leads for a little bit, and customers are worth quite a bit with our services. So that's something that we've been able to do. Many businesses are able to do something like that, right? So those are things that you need to think about and get right. If I was presented with a business that has a return on ad spend that is too low, let's say it's a 2 and they need it to be a 3, and we're looking at their numbers, I've done this dozens of times, where you look at their ad campaigns, you think, these are pretty good ad campaigns. These have been optimized. You've been working on this for a year, 18 months, 2 years. Like, this is doing quite well. It's very consistent. In that scenario, it's going to be really hard to decrease their cost per purchase substantially. It's normally going to be much easier to increase their customer lifetime value. Often that's as simple as, what's your follow-up process like to get people to buy again? Can we really beef that up? Can we get better at the email marketing, the SMS marketing, the remarketing with Google Ads and other online ad platforms? Can we send people out stuff in the post? How can we reactivate customers a lot better? It's often a lot easier to do that and take an average customer lifetime value from $100 to $200 than it is to halve the cost per purchase. So in terms of where we're looking to do things the easy way and get the results, that can be a really good way to go. The other thing to think about is that sometimes you're not going to have a really large customer lifetime value through lots of repeat purchases or having a subscription or something like that. Sometimes you can do that by positioning yourself at the premium end of the market and just simply charging a lot more. You work with far fewer people, but you charge a lot more and you can be a lot more aggressive on your customer acquisition. So my journey into the digital marketing world, the paid ads world, I think I was given a false misconception of how easy it would be to get business results, because the very first business that I successfully ran ads for was my mum's interior design business. She'd always struggled to generate leads, only a little company. I was learning this stuff. This is literally 15 years ago. And she said, okay, you're messing around with these Google ad campaigns, like, can you run ads for my business so we can generate leads? Like, sure. And it was really easy. Now, I was running ads. They were costing about £75 each. That's about $100 each per lead. And this is 15 years ago, so the same campaigns would be much more expensive cost per lead now. So what I'm trying to say is those campaigns weren't brilliant. I did not have the skill at that point. They weren't optimized properly. The platforms have become more sophisticated as well since then, significantly. But I didn't have the skill to be really good at it. But £75 cost per lead was absolutely fine, very profitable, because the average customer lifetime value for my mum's interior design business was £75,000, about $100,000. And that's because you don't hire an interior designer unless you're doing something significant, right? Unless you're remodeling your home or putting in a new kitchen and new bathrooms. It tends to be larger properties and wealthier people that engage interior designers. So I was like, this is really easy. And I started working with lots of other businesses. And it wasn't quite so easy. It was more difficult to get them great results because their customer lifetime values were much smaller, and therefore we had to pay a lot less to acquire customers. Like, we were paying £75 a lead, we could have paid 10 times as much in terms of cost per lead, and it had been profitable then, even though I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. So there might be ways that you can think about that within your market. Okay, how can we really focus on the premium end of this? How can we sell more expensive stuff? How can we pivot slightly so that instead of our customers being worth just a little, they're worth a ton? And that could make all the difference. And that leads me to my next point, which is that you have to know your numbers, and not just your Google Ads metrics, things like what your CPC is, your CTR, etc., but also the core business numbers and the core business metrics. So I've talked in the previous point quite a lot about AOV, average order value. You need to know that. I speak to a lot of business owners that don't, and they don't even know how to calculate it. It's one of the things that annoys me the most when I speak to business owners, honestly, is when I ask them what their AOV is, their average order value, and they say, oh, well, I don't really have one because sometimes people buy a little bit and they don't spend very much, and sometimes they buy a lot and they spend a lot. I'm like, right, okay. Average. An average, everyone has an average. So you take all of those, you add them all up, and you divide it by the number of purchases, and then that gives you an average order value. Like, everyone has an average order value. So you need to know, and you need to calculate that. You need to know your conversion rates and the different stages. So what's your conversion rate from landing page to lead, for example, if you're lead based? And then what's your conversion rate from lead to actual customer? And then what's your conversion rate from customer to an ascension offer, which I would recommend most businesses have. Again, all a game of increasing customer LTV. Customer lifetime value. You need to know that number. You need to be able to calculate it. You need to know and track if a customer buys once, how many more times do they buy, and things like that. Or if we acquire a new customer, at what rate do they refer? What's the word of mouth impact? You might say that for every customer we acquire, 1 in 2 will refer to someone else. So you can increase your customer lifetime value by 50% and plug that into your acquisition costs, because each customer is not worth the $100 order they created, because 1 in 2 is going to refer another $100 order. Each new customer acquired through paid ads is worth $150 in that scenario. Now, I know that a lot of business owners aren't sort of mathematically inclined, and they're approaching this trying to run their Google Ads thinking, I don't know these numbers, I don't even know how to calculate them. Personally, I found that easy. I struggle more on the creative side of things. I struggle more with videos and imagery, and like any editing around that was never my strong suit. The maths I find easy. But you need to do some basic maths. You have to calculate and know these numbers. So I'll give you some examples as well, because when we're talking about LTV, one of the biggest impacts that's going to affect that for certain types of businesses is going to be churn rate. How many customers are you losing, assuming people buy regularly, or it's a recurring based business, a subscription business, something along those lines. I'll talk more about subscriptions in a second. But I'll give you some examples of how you would go about calculating this. And also within that, I'm going to show you the difference in different churn rates and how that can affect things and how that ties into the previous point. So let's assume, for example, that a customer is worth $1,000 per month. You offer a service of some sort, $1,000 per month, and you have a 25% monthly churn, a really high churn rate, but these do exist. Okay? Then your customer LTV, you take your 1,000, you divide by 0.25 is $4,000. On average, each customer sticks around 4 months. If we were to take that churn down from 25% to say 5%, a much better monthly churn number. Still, for certain industries, that's quite high. For others, that's totally to be expected. It's going to vary. But if your churn drops from 25% to 5%, you take that 1,000, you divide it by 0.05 instead of by 0.25, and that gives you a $20,000 lifetime customer value. So by reducing the churn from 25% to 5%, you've increased your customer value from $4,000 to $20,000. So that's how you would calculate it, by the way, if you have a subscription-based business. And that should emphasize the importance of reducing that churn for keeping customers longer. And that ties into the previous point about how to get people to buy again, how do you get them to stick around longer. That makes all the difference. You have to know your churn numbers for that to work. And I mentioned subscriptions a second ago. This whole increasing LTV, understanding your numbers and factoring that in, is why so many businesses and so many very successful businesses have either become full-on subscription businesses or have a subscription element to them now. So obviously this was going to happen with things like television and phone contracts, and that happened many years ago. But now you've got things like HelloFresh, where the food you cook in your own home is a subscription. Your takeaway apps have a subscription element. You can pay for a premium element that recurs every month. So many different businesses you try and interact with will have something that's a subscription. Many retail outlets will have an annual fee. There's a subscription in there. Cinemas, it's not just pay for a ticket as you go. Why don't you buy the monthly package? And it's all about creating a subscription. Your car, if you've got a new car that gets updates like mine does, like you pay for premium connectivity and different subscriptions, right? So that's why they're doing it. It's because they really know their numbers and they're trying to increase customer LTV. Other things you need to know. What is your break-even cost to acquire a customer? So what is the absolute max you can afford to pay? To do that, you need to know the numbers we talked about previously, AOV, LTV, but you can calculate that. What is your acceptable cost to acquire a customer? Normally those numbers are going to be a little bit different. You're going to want some profit in there. Not all businesses operate like that though, by the way. And often the ones that grow the fastest, they sacrifice early profit for massive growth. In fact, the businesses that grow the absolute fastest are usually ones with external funding that operate in, say, the software space. And they are willing to acquire customers at a significant loss because they know once they achieve a certain level of critical mass, they become the go-to software for that particular niche, for that particular thing, and the rewards are then just enormous. They get loads of word of mouth, press coverage, they grow organically massively from that point. So we've worked with businesses like that, and it's incredible to run their ad campaigns because they are much more concerned about new customer acquisition than they are about the cost of acquiring those customers. I can think of businesses where we're selling a $10 a month subscription and it's costing us $80 to get that new customer. Now, most businesses can't do that. They don't have external funding to be able to provide the cash to do that. But that's what those businesses do. That's why they grow so fast. That's why they often sell for insane numbers. You also need to know your margins. So how much you're actually making with your products, with your services. And that factors in. So we've talked about customer LTV because I think that's easier to understand. But really the metric you should be using is LTGP, which is lifetime gross profit. Because you might have a customer LTV of $10,000, but if you have a 10% gross profit margin, then really your LTGP, your lifetime gross profit, is $1,000. Whereas if you have a 60% gross profit margin, then it's $6,000. Your LTGP is $6,000. So you could be misled looking at lifetime value. You have to factor in the margin on those products or services, and that determines then what you can afford to pay to acquire that customer, not just the lifetime value. So just something to be aware of. And you might, when you run the numbers, you might decide to put more budget behind products and services where your LTGP, your lifetime gross profit, is actually better. Just a quick aside, I know I'm getting quite numbersy here. You calculate your gross profit by taking what you make in terms of revenue, you deduct your direct costs, the cost of manufacturing or the direct cost of labor, and that's how you get your gross profit. Now, from that gross profit, you're gonna have to take out everything else. So admin costs and rent and staff salaries and things like that. But just wanted to quickly help explain that and provide a little bit more information there. Google Ads truth number 5, an initial cost to acquire a customer 50% above your target cost to acquire a customer is great. Now, if you've set your target, this is what we can afford to pay to acquire a customer. Let's say that's $50. That's what you can afford to pay to acquire a customer. And you set up your Google Ad campaigns, you're running them, you've got a little bit of data, and you can see that your cost, the results you're delivering, cost to acquire a customer, your CAC, is $75. A lot of people would look at that as a failure, thinking, oh, we're 50% above where we need to be. Nightmare. This is not working. We're losing money on every customer acquired. That is not the right way to look at it at all. The Google advertisers that think that way are undervaluing and underestimating the power of optimization. Because you can absolutely optimize that campaign. If you first set it up, you can optimize that campaign to get that cost to acquire a customer from $75 to $50 or less. We've worked on many Google Ad campaigns where we have taken an initial result and at least halved that cost to acquire a customer. In some cases, significantly more. Because there's so many things you can test and work out and nuances that you can figure out for that particular business and go, okay, right, we've experimented with this and we've experimented with this. And sometimes you run experiments that don't work at all, but then you'll run an experiment on something and you go, that's a 10% improvement. Great, right, bank that. Let's keep that 10% improvement. Let's go test something else. Oh, amazing. We've got another 13% improvement from this adjustment as well. Right, let's do more of that. And you can go on and tweak things and improve things and benefit from that optimization process. Optimizing is kind of like compounding. And you're probably familiar with the effect of compounding. You play around with a compound calculator and it's mad, right? You put in a little bit of money, it compounds at X% interest over time and it ends up this monstrous sum. The same happens with optimizing campaigns. You test things and that gets a small percentage improvement, but then you layer that on top of another small percentage improvement, on top of another one, on top of another one, on top of another one. Before you know it, your campaigns are producing 3 times the return on ad spend of what they were previously. It can go from a 3x ROAS to a 9x ROAS with proper optimization. People often undervalue it because they're just not aware. They haven't been through this process before. When you're in my situation, you've worked on thousands of campaigns, you know that this absolutely can happen. But also it takes time and effort to go through all these things. And it just does. There's no way to shortcut that. You've just got to go through it. Well, I suppose you could shortcut that by hiring an agency like mine, where we know there are a bunch of things we don't need to test based on our experience. We can just go straight for, we think this is going to work and we'll be right a lot of the time. But if you're going through this yourself, you have to go through the testing process. So I'm going to give you a quick list of things that you could look to test to help improve your campaigns, to improve your results. And actually, you probably should go through all of these at some point. Like I said, layer those improvements on top of each other and you get that compounding effect. So you can test new ads, obviously, whether these are responsive search ads or images or videos, depending on which campaign type you're using, or all of the above. Test new keywords, something that you don't just want to do once, you want to do again and again and again and find different options and look to improve results that way. Test new campaign types. A lot of businesses get stuck with one or two campaign types. They are missing out on the suite that is the Google Ads network and all the different places you can put ads, even if it's just for remarketing purposes. In some of the placement options that are potentially going to perform not as well for your business, you still probably want to be remarketing there. So absolutely test new campaign types. There are 6. Takes a while to work your way through them, but you might find one that produces significantly better results than what you're currently using. Test new landing page layouts, a huge one. Everyone thinks about their Google Ads as being the ad platform, and they ignore the post-click sales funnel. The landing page, what about the next page? Is there a squeeze page? Is there a thank you page after they opt in for something? Can we optimize that? Are there other links that people can be taken to? Can we optimize our upsell process once people buy? Can we optimize our follow-up sequence once someone becomes a lead? Loads of things in the post-click sales funnel that you can look to improve and optimize. Test new offers. Right, everyone in their industry offers a free consultation. How can we make this more impactful? We've got to have something more interesting than free consultation. Can we stick a guarantee in there? Can we offer a certain result, or we'll keep working for free until we get there, or we'll give you money back, or something really powerful? Everyone delivers this thing within a week. Can we do next day delivery? How can we get next day delivery? Think of ways to significantly improve your offers. New styles of creative. You're testing new images, new videos. That's great, but are they all of the same style, a similar style? Have you tested UGC video ads versus an animated video ad versus a founder-led video ad versus a demonstration video? Lots of different examples there. How about working with influencers? One of the absolute easiest, most consistently effective ways to significantly improve your Google Ad results is to hire an influencer to feature in your Google Ads. This can apply more to the more creative parts of Google Ads, less so to search, but YouTube and display and things like that, incorporate them within your Performance Max campaigns. But people that are recognizable, that grab people's attention, so they then check out the rest of your ads, then far more likely to click, far more likely to become a lead, become a customer. That could be a really great way to go. I've talked about that before, and it's something I'm really bullish on. Because I know, well, personally, because I am an influencer, and I know what happens when I recommend something to my audience, that a flood of new customers, a flood of clicks, just like I know when I recommend my own services. Like from this very video I've talked about done for you services, there will absolutely be a ton of people that go and book a call based off that recommendation. I know the power of influencers because I'm one myself in my own little world. Ad extensions, what are now called ad assets, things like site links, callouts. There are loads of options, by the way. You've got price, you've got call, you've got structured snippets. There's loads you could look to add in. Some are going to apply to your business, some aren't. Have you even incorporated them yet? If not, go ahead and give those a go. And then have you tested various different options to see which perform best? You can see that data, you can optimize around this. The ad extensions are likely to be a relatively small percentage improvement, but they layer on top of each other like we've already talked about. So many different things that you can do to optimize your campaigns over time and improve them, and just do not underestimate them. I think thinking about optimization through a compounding lens, as people have become much more familiar with the power of compound interest and what that does to a sum of money, it's exactly the same with Google Ad results when you're doing those various little optimizations. So I've got some more Google Ads truths for you. Before I get into those though, I want to quickly let you know about Hyros. Hyros is fantastic tracking and attribution software and can really help you improve your Google Ad results. It's a software that all the big players in the industry use, including myself. I use it to track results for my own ads across multiple platforms, including Google Ads, and all my organic results as well, which is super helpful. So if someone, for example, comes through and books a call for our done-for-you services, I can see exactly where that person came from. This is particularly important if you're running ads across multiple channels or generating customers organically as well. Without accurate data, you are flying blind, and knowledge is power. So let me show you how important this is. So I'm here in my Hyros dashboard. I'm going to take a look at the data and the results that Hyros has been able to track and compare those to what I'm seeing within my Google Ad account for the same campaign. So this is a Google Ad campaign that we've been running. We're only looking at data for a few days here, but it really demonstrates what's going on. So you can see Hyros has registered 6 leads generated, a cost per lead of just over £15, 75 clicks. It's just a branded search campaign, hence why the CTR is 30%. So not a huge amount going on, but representative, right? So that's the data we can see within Hyros. If I jump over to my Google Ad account, we look at the exact same campaign, same time frame. We've got May 21st to 27th. You can see a lot of the data matches up, right? We've got 75 clicks, 30% CTR just like before. But if we scroll over, you can see that Google has only registered 3 conversions as opposed to the 6. So it's registered half the number of conversions. And I can tell you, looking at the back-end data, that the 6 from Hyros is the accurate number. And that's why this is so important, because we might look at the Google Ads data and come to the wrong conclusion, think this isn't profitable, turn stuff off when we shouldn't, but we can verify it with the Hyros data and make much better, more informed decisions and end up with better overall ad results because of it. So if you want to improve the performance of your Google ad campaigns and be able to see exactly where your leads and sales are coming from, go ahead and sign up to Hyros. There is a link in the video description. The next Google Ads truth that I want to talk about is that Google Ads is a lot more than just search. I think when most of us think of Google Ads, we think of search. That's the part that we intuitively understand. Someone goes into Google, they search for something, ads pop up that are relevant to their search. I want to put my ads in front of people that are searching for things that are relevant to what it is that I sell. And search has that massive advantage that there's intent. So you know someone's likely to be interested based on their search activity. But Google Ads is so much more than just search. Absolutely fine for you to start with search as a new Google advertiser. It's the easiest part to understand, easy to get up and running. But once you have some conversion data, once you've got a bit familiar with the ad platform, you want to start incorporating the other Google ad campaign types. So if you're an e-commerce business, Google shopping campaigns are brilliant. If you're not familiar with those, it's like where you search for something, you see cards along the top where it's got a product image, price, like a link to click through, description, a bit of a different format. They're quite similar to search ads, but a different format that are more product appropriate. So Google shopping ads are brilliant for that. There are other campaign types like demand gen. If you're a previously run ads on, say, Meta or somewhere else and you have visual assets, demand gen can be a great way to get up and running because you can just bring those creative assets, those images, those videos, create a demand gen campaign and up and off you go and you're up and running. There are display campaigns that put ads across different places, all around the internet, all over apps, banner ads, things like that. A lot of those are going to be Google Ads display ads. So a visual ad format for the most part that you can reach people in many more ways. And then of course we've got Performance Max. So Performance Max looks to incorporate all the other campaign types and it's going to include search and shopping and display and discover, and it's going to put ads on Gmail and all sorts. And Performance Max is my favorite Google ad campaign type, but not right at the beginning because it tends to perform better for ad accounts that have more conversion data, where Google knows what a conversion looks like. They know who to target, what time of day, how many ad impressions they need to purchase, become a lead, etc. So the longer you run Google Ads for, the more data you gather, the better Performance Max performs because it is more of a hands-off campaign type for Google advertisers. Google handles a lot more of the targeting and the delivery. So definitely something that you want to experiment with, definitely something you want to incorporate once you've got some conversions, because Performance Max can be really, really powerful. I also don't think beginners should start with Performance Max because it is a more complicated campaign type to set up, because you're creating ads for search and you're creating ads for YouTube and Gmail and display. Like, it can become quite complicated, right? But I think it's really important to, like I mentioned in the previous point, to test different campaign types. Now you might decide that based on your industry, the intent that comes from search is the most important thing. And therefore that's where the majority of your ad budget wants to go. And that's okay. I'd like you to test before you come to that conclusion, but that's okay. But even in that scenario, why would you not want to remarket to the people that have clicked on a search ad, come through to your website, but haven't yet taken that next step? And you can remarket to them very inexpensively, but very effectively. Those remarketing ads are probably pound for pound where you're going to see the best return on ad spend. You can do that on display as part of a Performance Max campaign in the various placements on Discover, Gmail, YouTube, etc., and sort of hoover up a lot of low-hanging fruit. And that's a no-brainer for a lot of Google advertisers. Google Ads truth number 7 is to embrace automation. Now, a lot of Google advertisers are fighting automation really hard, and I don't think that's the right way to go. Now, there are times when you could be smart, and as a more advanced Google advertiser, you can decide, I know this is the default, I know this is what Google recommends, but I'm going to do something different. But in my mind, there is a clear difference between doing that, about being clever with a few things. I'm going to turn off optimized targeting with a new ad account, for example. I'm not going to use Performance Max straight away. Maybe I'm going to test a few different bidding strategies initially and then look to focus in later on once there's more data in my ad account. There are decisions like that you can make. There's a difference between that and going, I don't like anything automated. I want to manage all my own campaigns. I don't want Google messing with things. That is not smart. It's also very much against the direction of travel. You are swimming against the tide. More and more, all the online ad platforms are moving to a situation where the ad platform, Google is going to handle more of the targeting. Google is going to handle more of the delivery. And therefore, you as the advertiser want to put more time and focus into those other things where you have control, where you can get competitive advantage. And quite frankly, the vast majority of the time, Google is going to do a better job of those things than you are. So if you are using a bidding strategy of maximize conversions or maximize conversions value, as I would usually recommend, you can trust Google to handle a lot of the targeting and a lot of the delivery. You don't need to mess around with a lot of the other things. And obviously it's going to vary depending on your campaign type, but being really specific with certain targeting options. I only want my ads to appear here, or I only want my ads to appear to this very specific demographic. I don't want Google to have the flexibility to go outside that. Google can work out in many scenarios, right, this person isn't within these targeting suggestions, but doesn't matter. We think they're likely to convert based on their activity. Google has more data than anyone else on people's online activity. Their prediction mechanisms for working out if someone's likely to convert for your offer are pretty good. And I think you want to trust that. And if you are fighting it, you're only going to be more and more annoyed and more disappointed by the things that are coming down the line. Because that's the direction of travel. It's a direction of travel for a few reasons. One, because Google has data and they can see that they do a better job in this than the vast majority of advertisers. Most advertisers that try and tweak with this stuff and control it manually end up with worse results. So that's part of it. The other thing is it's a way of calming fears around privacy that some people have. If the advertisers themselves aren't specifically targeting small groups of people based on their online activity, then privacy regulators seem to find that more comfortable if it's sort of done behind the scenes by the ad platform itself. Us advertisers aren't deciding, it's like all being decided by Google's AI to work out who to put these ads in front of. So I think that's the other big reason why Google is looking to do this. Now, I'm not saying that you don't ever want to go against what Google recommends or tweak with things. Like I already mentioned, you might want to turn off optimized targeting initially for an ad campaign. You might not want to use Performance Max with a brand new ad account because you haven't got the conversion data yet. I think those are scenarios where you're being smart, but in general, you want to trust Google's AI. You want to trust that Google is powerful, that their automated setups, their more automated campaigns, things like Performance Max, very often deliver the best results. Google is absolutely incentivized to get us good results because they know that's what will keep us paying them. That's what's likely to make us scale up our ad campaigns. That's one of the big reasons why they're doing this and moving in this direction. Now, what that does do, it absolutely does not eliminate the need for a Google advertiser. I want to make that very clear. But what it does do is it takes some of the workload off our hands, and you want to rededicate those resources to other things where you can have more of a competitive advantage. You're unlikely to get a competitive advantage now in the various settings that you select, or the targeting and the delivery options, in a way that you could have done 10 years ago, for sure. Now, we have to work on our offers. How can we differentiate from the competition? Can we offer a guarantee? Can we offer better delivery? Can we offer something that other people aren't offering? That's a huge one. Can we get this done faster for people? You can compete on your branding and your messaging. So what feel do we want all our creative assets to have? What language are we going to use in our search ads? Are we going to be playful? Are we going to be serious? Are we going to stand out from the competition? How can we bring our brand's personality to the table to compete here? How can we improve our landing page experience so that people feel amazed? Sounds like a strong word, but I think it is possible to build a landing page experience. People are like, wow, that's incredible. I have to go ahead. I have to work with these guys. I have to buy this thing. How can you find ways to differentiate? Can you work with influencers that other people in your industry aren't working with to grab that attention in the first place? Can you massively improve your follow-up system so that someone becomes a lead, they get called within minutes, and someone calls them, if they don't pick up, again and again and again until they get in touch with them? Once they do make contact, they move through the sales funnel really quickly. They're on top of it. They're really working on these things. There's lots of other parts where you can work on things and look to improve them, both within the ad platform, like the ads themselves is a huge component, but also stuff that happens after that, landing pages, offers are sort of incorporated through the whole thing. But those are the parts that you can control. Those are the parts that Google's not going to be able to automate for us. So like, it's not like, okay, well, in this direction of travel that's towards automation, those things are all going to disappear in a few years' time. Like, no. An advertiser, a marketer is going to need to have input on the different offers used, on the promotions run, on the influencers worked with, on the sales follow-up process, landing pages, all that sort of stuff. There's going to be variation and room for beating the competition, which is really, really important. Now, the last thing I want to mention is that if you aren't getting any conversions from your Google ads, check out this video next. It's not fun to have a Google ad campaign and it just be delivering no results or very few conversions. That's something you're going to want to jump on right away. In this video, I describe ways to go about doing that, what the potential issues might be, steps you can take to try and improve that situation fast. So if you haven't already, go ahead and check it out.